Welcome, everybody, to the third interview in our series of vocational reflections for NVN members. And our guest this evening is Lawrence Souder. And I'll give you a little sketch of Lawrence's background before Lawrence begins to speak. He was born in South Jersey. He came to Philadelphia to attend LaSalle College, and then he stayed in Philadelphia. In about the year 2000, he moved to Mount Airy. And then, fortunately, 3 or 4 years ago, he discovered NVN. And that was also about the time of his retirement. So with that sketch, we'll begin. And shall we begin with a question, or did you have any clarifications you wanted to make?
Well, yeah, actually, I wanted to say something about the picture that was used to promote this session. I really love the composition that Sarah Allen created with the picture, but I just want to correct any false impressions that it might have caused. It makes me look like a mad scientist or something, but I'm not really a scientist, and I probably couldn't even play one on TV. But I do have a passion for science, and it's a passion that began when I was a child. And so that, I guess I'll just start by talking about how my childhood was infused with science, and I still am very much interested in science. So in South Jersey, where I was born and grew up, a lot of my time was spent in my workbench, where I had an amateur radio setup. I was an amateur radio operator, and it was a wonderful activity for a child who was alone a lot of the time. And I got the chance to build my own radio receivers and transmitters and talk to people over the airwaves. And in doing that, I learned a lot about electronics. And so I thought, by the time I got to high school, I thought, well, I would like to make a career of science. So when I graduated high school and I entered LaSalle College, I was a science major, but I found out that in the middle of November of my first year of college, I realized I was not going to pass Chemistry 101. So I had to.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah. So I had to drop that course, but then that made me a little bit vulnerable, because if you know your American history, this was in 1968. And that was the height of the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. So I needed to stay in college to stay out of Vietnam. So I had to change my my major from science, and I was taking Latin at the time to fulfill a modern language or a foreign language requirement. So I thought, well, I kind of like the topic, and I'm not doing too badly with it. So I decided to change and major in classics, not knowing what I would do with classics when I graduated. And I found out that there really were only 2 career paths for a classics major. One was a Roman Catholic priest, and the other one was a teacher of Latin or Greek. So of course, at the time, I was a red-blooded male, and I knew I couldn't abide by a vow of chastity, so I became a Latin teacher. And I put aside my passion for science at the time, but I was still always interested in science, especially electronics.
And I understand that after college, you tried teaching for a while.
I did.
And what was that like?
Well, I got out of college in 1972, and I spent another couple of years getting a master's degree in classics at Villanova. And I actually taught Latin and Greek for about 3 years at Chestnut Hill Academy, now called, of course, Springside Chestnut Hill, for 3 years. And after the third year, at the end of the third year, I had developed a rather poor relationship with a bunch of eighth graders. They hated me and I hated them. And one spring day, I would go out to my car in the parking lot. It's a VW Bug, and it had been raised up on cement blocks. So I had to get my jack out and lift up the car and pull the blocks out. I mean, there was nothing that was damaged, but they sent me a clear message that I was not welcome there. So, and I didn't really enjoy teaching young children. So that was really the beginning of my career crisis, my first career crisis. And I didn't teach Latin again after that.
And you went on to something, I think, quite different.
Yeah, you referred to it earlier as a leap from one area to another. And I guess on the outside, it would look that way, but to me, it wasn't that radical. I realized after leaving Chestnut Hill Academy, I began to think, well, what else can I do? And I went back to thinking of all that I knew about electronics as an amateur radio operator. And I realized I probably knew as much about electronics as I knew about Latin and Greek. And so I found this help wanted ad in the Inquirer back in 1976 or so. There was no monster.com back then. And it was looking for somebody to teach electronics at a trade and technical school downtown. It was called the American Academy of Broadcasting. It was almost a sort of fly-by-night, but they produced graduates who got out into the field. But it was quite an experience. And it was my first time teaching adults. In fact, a lot of my students were veterans of Vietnam. And they were just intensely interested in getting a job, getting trained, and they listened to every word I said. So it was very gratifying to be in the classroom with them. And of course, it was gratifying to be able to use the knowledge I had gained as a teenager about electronics.
You mentioned something about your next phase was technical writing. I'm interested in why you chose that path. There seems to be a lot of paths that open to you.
Yeah, well, there's not a big difference between technical training of the sort that I was doing in the trade schools and technical writing. Both of them are about communicating technical things to an audience. And so it seemed to be a natural transition to go from teaching to writing. While I was teaching like electronics, I began to write freelance articles for magazines. One of them was Popular Electronics, which actually was on the newsstand at the time. And with those clips, I was able to persuade a corporation to trust me to be a tech writer for them. So I worked for IBM for a while, producing technical documentation for their computer systems. This was when they were migrating from mainframes to PCs. So it was the early days of PCs. Anyway, I also during that time, while I was a tech writer, I was teaching as an adjunct, I was teaching tech writing to graduate students at Drexel. And that really impressed me. I found that was where I wanted to be. I had a chance to, again, teach adults who at least pretended to know, pretended to be interested in what I was saying. And also I was able to sort of wallow in the world of ideas. And that was very exciting for me. So I was able to get into the theoretical things around technical issues. So this was when I was about 38, when this all came together. And at that point, I had all the trappings of a respectable middle-class life. I had a wife, I had a child, I had a house in Roxborough, and I had gainful employment. But I wasn't happy. And that was the beginning of my midlife crisis. And unlike most guys, during a midlife crisis, you know, they want the motorcycle, the Harley Davidson. That didn't interest me. I really wanted to teach full-time at Drexel or some comparable institution. And they said I could, but I had to have PhD after my name. So at the age of 39, I went back to graduate school. I entered a PhD program at Temple, and finally completed the program after about 9 years. It took me a long time, but I entered a program in rhetoric, which seems kind of odd, but I found out that people who taught technical writing in university came out of the tradition of rhetoric. And it turns out that, you know, rhetoric comes from, of course, the ancient Greeks and Romans as they developed public speaking, but the principles really are about how to adapt any message to an audience or an audience to a message. And so tech writing really is based on the principles of rhetoric. And so that's why I followed that path.
When you use rhetoric in that way, that's a surprise to me, because I think of rhetoric as the process of public speaking or something.
Yeah.
But it's I see it's grounded in making people understand you. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that, you know, you see headlines in the newspaper that say things about, you know, the president's empty rhetoric or deceitful rhetoric or something like that. And that's certainly true, but the rhetoric as an academic discipline has a very venerable past, and it goes back again to the Greeks. So it was curious how entering this graduate program in rhetoric sort of reunited my background in classics and my passion in science, because I focused on, within the field of rhetoric, I focused on a subfield called the rhetoric of science, if you can imagine such a thing, which is really about how scientists communicate with each other and with the public. So in learning about that field, I found out that scientists are not always telling the truth. And sometimes when they misbehave, they don't apologize sincerely. So some of my own research on the rhetoric of science came to those conclusions. I have one article that I published in a journal called Science and Engineering Ethics that was entitled Scientists' Apologies for Research Misconduct. Do they really mean it? And what I did was I analyzed the letters of retraction that scientists would issue if they had to pull back an article for whatever reason. And often it was because of misconduct. And it was interesting to see a variety of the ways people would apologize for their bad behavior. Another article that I published in the same journal was entitled The Ethics of Ironic Science in Its Search for Spoof. It turns out that sometimes scientists have published articles that were not meant to be taken seriously. They were ironic. And the problem with that, of course, is that not everybody gets the joke. And so some people took the article seriously. They actually cited the article, and it became part of the research archive, which, you know, it really tainted, I think, the research archive. So anyway, that's a sort of a long way of saying that I was able to participate in the scientific community sort of from a distance. So even though I never became a scientist, I was still able to be a sort of part of it as an observer of the ways scientists communicate.
I love this. This is a success story. You meandered till you found a way to do what you loved. It must have been hard to retire.
Well, it was, yeah. I retired in August of 2020, just in the middle of the pandemic, and I thought I was going to teach until I was like 75. I thought I could do another 5 years. But the university put some money on the table to buy me out. And I thought, it's hard to turn down a pile of money like that. And then once I made the decision, I realized, oh yeah, this was the right thing to do. I didn't really realize how tired I was of what I was doing. I enjoyed the work, but my time was up. I was done, and especially grading papers.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you plan for this retirement session.
Yeah, as Steve pointed out, I have a lot of things in my house that reflect my passion for science, and that could be the topic of another presentation. But I also have gone back to things that are more artistic and that I've always been interested in, but I've never had the time to really sink my teeth into. And one of them is origami. I really enjoy origami. And I've reached a point now where I'm not just following directions, but I'm starting to sort of create my own designs. And so I thought maybe I could end this interview with one example. This is my version of a flower, and I hope you can recognize. And it's really made out of a very basic shape. And I think that that's kind of a grounding principle in origami. It's not really a complex practice. It's a matter of finding simple shapes and just folding them in ways that make, in this case, a rather lifelike figure.
That's wonderful. Thank you. From radio electronics through classics, origami. And tell folks what you do in NVN. You're taking on some roles there too.
Yeah, well, again, I just feel like I have, you know, a resource here that I can offer. I'm pretty good at tinkering with things, especially computers. And so early on, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago, what's his name? He moved to Washington, key person in NVN. We did some computer
Bill
work.
Weiser.
Yes,
Bill
Weiser, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, we did some computer workshops together, and now I'm doing some of the video processing for these interviews, and they're going up on YouTube. And so I think we're amassing a very useful and important archive of, you know, information and stories about NVN members. I'm so proud to be a small part of that by uploading the movies, the videos.
that's wonderful. Well, thank you. We have time for questions. If you folks have things that you would like to ask Lawrence? And maybe we can go to gallery view for that. And I think you can unmute yourselves when you've decided you have a question. Steve.
I don't want to press too hard, but Lawrence, you have some amazing origami items that you've made, and so Lucy and I have seen them up close. So do you have any at hand that you could show?
Sure.
He did.
Sure. Yeah, well.
You saw the one that he showed, didn't you, Steve?
Of course, but in addition.
Yeah.
Oh,
in
more.
addition,
Okay.
Yeah.
because he built our house for us out of paper.
Well, yes, he's got this paper screen here.
So here's one of my favorites.
Oh.
It has an almost organic shape to it in the middle. And again, it's amazing because it's a very simple fold. I mean, once you see how it's done, it's like magic tricks, you know. Once you find out how it's done, it's like, wow, that's pretty simple. And I think this is another example of that. This is one that I'm particularly fascinated by. It's called a ginger jar. And this is a little more complex. But again, it's just, you know, following directions, step 1, step 2, and so forth. And then this one is, there's some origami designs that are animated that I find especially fascinating. This is one of them. This is just a simple box, or cube, I should say. And it's folded in such a way that when you pull these tabs,
Oh, wow.
it unfolds
And goes back.
and it goes back again. Isn't that amazing?
That is really neat.
You can imagine that this would be like part of a spaceship or something, you know, and it deploys by unraveling.
Is that one that you invented?
No, I didn't invent these. No.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought people would like that.
Are
Question?
you familiar with geometric origami?
A little bit, yeah. Oh, you have it too. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, here's another one.
Oh, and the triangular. Wow.
Wow. This is why we need a show.
Nice, yeah.
Oh, we have to compare. We have to compare notes. That's wonderful.
I'd love to learn some of what you showed. Yes, I definitely would.
Great.
Tell them about some of the other projects that you showed me in your house.
Let's see.
Once you choose, oh, the shadow one, for instance.
Yeah, I've got this machine. In fact, it just went on. That it casts a moving shadow on my window shade that faces the road of someone in a rocking chair. So I don't have a security system here, but no one's going to invade a house where somebody's rocking it back and forth, right?
Didn't somebody ask you about the person in the window?
Yeah, I had a neighbor across the street who said, Lawrence, is there somebody living on your 3rd floor? It was this machine.
It's like Psycho.
Yeah.
Tell them about the one in the photo. The
Right.
one in the photo. Tell them about the.
Okay, yeah, the
Yeah.
photograph where I'm standing behind that table. The table actually is, it has 3 pendulums. 2 of the pendulums are connected to an arm that moves a pen back and forth. And the other pendulum moves a flat surface around. and you put a piece of paper on the flat surface and you let the pen ride on the paper, and you get all three pendulums swinging, and it produces a marvelous figure that all by itself. And it's, of course, it's all done by gravity. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And it's on the wall behind you in the, beside you in the picture. So
Yeah,
it's
so-
creating art. Oh, there, wow.
Here's an example of what it produces.
Wow.
And again, you know, I can't claim much credit for this. I just followed directions. I saw this thing in a book somewhere. I thought, well, that would be fun, you know. So,
I think
You're having too much fun.
Eileen Hilger had a question.
Well, I was just curious, and you may have said this and I missed it, but I wonder, as you reflect back on your career, did you feel like at these choice points that you had to work real hard to find your next path, or did you feel like it's sort of, oh, the next step was open, or you had mentors that led you to the next step? How do you feel like things unfolded?
yeah. You know, that's such a good question. You like to think that you have control over your life, you know?
Right, right. That's why I wondered what you thought looking back.
I think things just sort of fell in front of me, and I thought, well, that looks pretty cool. And I followed it, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
Once I decided to follow something, there was a lot of work involved, especially, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but getting a PhD was the second hardest thing I've ever had to do. It was, I was completely unprepared. You know, it's nothing like a bachelor's or a master's degree. There, you just serve time. But a PhD is another animal altogether. And so it took me a long time to get through the program. And I guess that was the work part. But the idea of choosing that path, that was a lot of luck too, I think.
Mhm, mhm. Well, it was very fun to hear your story. Thank you.
Sure.
It makes me want to ask what the first hardest thing was, if that was the second hardest.
Learning how to fly an airplane without a motor.
Oh, that's great.
This is
I guess you
scary.
succeeded.
Well, that's a, what
Wow,
is it called? I forget.
a glider.
It's a
Oh,
sailplane, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get your sailplane license?
I did, yeah,
Oh, did you really?
I did.
Did you have to have somebody, some plane take you up? I mean, take
Yeah.
the airplane up and then they let you go?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a tow plane that pulls you up,
Oh, plane,
and
okay.
when you get to a certain altitude, usually it's about 3,000 feet, you're inside the sailplane, you have control over that. You pull this knob and it lets the rope go, and then you're on your own.
Yeah. It's as close to heaven as you'll ever get on earth.
Yeah. Well, that was one experience where I felt in complete control of my life. You know, it was all about me.
do you still do this?
No. It was too expensive.
That's incredible.
What is the most your favorite activity of all the things you've done in your lifetime? Do you have a particular favorite?
Huh. Well, right now, yes. You know, speaking of right now, or over the years.
Over the years, but it could be right now.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to pick out a favorite. I guess it's when I create something that I take the most joy in. You know. And it doesn't have to be anything exotic or artistic, just to create something satisfying and something that other people can either appreciate or, more importantly, use. And so, for instance, I really, I feel privileged to be able to do these little technical things for NVN, because I noticed that people are actually responding to them. So I don't know, just that act of creativity that I can share is very satisfying.
And we're grateful. Tell people there was a question in the chat about how to get to them. So just
oh yeah, so the recordings, Sarah's is available. All of the recordings of this series, and also, you know, we have the other series too. It's NVN presentations, and so there's the thing with the greenhouse gas initiative, and Joan Adler's presentation is up there. So there's two playlists on our YouTube channel. There's that one, and there's this one for the interviews. So far we have Hope's, Sarah's, and I'm hoping that I can upload the one that you're viewing right now by tomorrow morning.
and tell people how to get to them.
Yes. So
I just put it in the chat.
Oh,
Great.
good.
great.
But could you put the listserv on the website, on the NVN website?
Yeah, is it? I think we
The
have.
link.
There's
Put
a
the
link.
to the website.
The link is there. The link is on the page of the homepage of the member part. You sign in and you see it. It's not
Okay.
on the public page, it's on the next page. Once you sign in, you can, I think, Lawrence, you made the link? I don't know, somebody made the link.
Yeah, I did.
And
I
it's very
actually had
easy.
found it. I don't remember exactly how I did, but I already have it in my bookmark. But sometimes you do things, you don't even know how you got there, like it just works out.
Yeah. Well, and
Question, if I may ask, somebody said they put something in the chat. I don't see anything recently that was put in the chat.
I just put it in the chat.
Something's messed up in
Meeting?
the chat.
Oh, maybe.
We don't see it.
The address isn't in the chat.
Okay.
If you thought you put it in, it didn't get there.
Not,
Have
oh,
to-
you know why? I sent it to Tom and Janet. Okay, I'll do it to everyone, for everyone.
you.
It's
Thank
not a
you.
link, it's just how to find it. Hang on.
Perfect.
It's coming momentarily if I can find everyone. There's everyone.
But the YouTube is available to the public. You
It
just
is.
can, yeah, it's just Northwest Village Network YouTube.
correct. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And
I forgot that.
Lawrence helped me with a technical thing today and with complete clarity. And now I know how experienced you are at it. So anyway,
Well,
thank you.
You're welcome. It was just rhetoric, really.
And it wasn't
That
inflammatory.
was all those
it
years paid off.
wasn't deceptive. It was very good.
If you get any questions, send them to him. Not the tech committee, he's the only one who really knows. Yeah, the rhetoric part was so interesting. I've never heard of that kind of connection.
Yes. Well, the pace of the questions has slowed down a bit, so maybe I'll seize this opportunity to thank everyone for coming. And to say that we will be having another one of these interviews, and it will be with Ann Silvers Lee on April 25th. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. So join us at that time. There will be reminders, and thank you all.